It is Country Viewpoint here on FlowFM, and the good folk of Victoria have some more freedoms today than perhaps they did over the last 5 days. The lockdown has come to an end as of midnight last night. The lockdown is over, and it's had a significant impact on a number of sectors, small business in particular. And joining me on the line at the moment, the Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman, Kate Carnell, joins us to talk about those impacts. Kate, welcome to Country Viewpoint.
Look, it's an absolute pleasure to be with you.
Great to have you on. Now, there's been some really significant impacts that we've seen through the last 5 days on so many different small businesses and different sectors. It's hard to pin them all down. But what are the major impacts that you've seen for small businesses across Victoria over the last 5 days?
Look, they're just devastated. I think it's because this was just sprung on them. It was before possibly, probably the busiest weekend they'd been planning for 12 months or so, with Valentine's Day and Lunar New Year and the Australian Open and a whole range of things. So it's going to be a big weekend, all planned. They've got all the stock in. They've done the prepping for events, all of those things, and then bang, they're closed again. And for 5 days, and of course, flowers, fruit, vegetables, all of those things don't last.
No, they don't. They don't.
So the reality is, what we're hearing is devastation for a lot of those small businesses. They've been struggling so hard for so long, and struggling to get over the first two lockdowns. And this was just for many of them. They're just saying, we just don't know if we can keep going. We're just devastated.
There is a lot of that, particularly in regional Victoria. And look, regional businesses, I guess, are almost a little more vulnerable than metropolitan by default, but it certainly hasn't been the case up until now. This lockdown was statewide, very different to the last one. A lot of people were heading out into regional areas on Valentine's Day to either get married or go and do something with their significant other. All of those, different plans were cancelled and the like, and we're hearing florists, wedding businesses, thousands upon thousands of dollars out of pocket and may have to shut their doors.
That's exactly the story we're hearing. And so the message here to the state government is that they have to compensate businesses for what they've lost. Not we'll give you $5,000 or whatever. For many of these businesses, the loss has been significantly greater than that. Also, they had staff rostered on. Lots of other expenses that have been prepaid and simply you can't get back. So this is dramatic, and fully accept that that state governments have a right to do this. They're trying to do the right thing from a COVID perspective, but it's not fair for small businesses to pick up the tab for this. The state government has to do it.
It's not a case of, I guess, politicising whether or not you agree with lockdowns or not. That's not really what we're talking about today. It is the fallout for those businesses statewide, not just in regional areas, but statewide. And I think the most important point to make here is in terms of compensation, if we don't compensate these businesses, many of them will wind up, will they not?
That's absolutely true, because they're apart from the fact that they simply won't be able to wear the expense or the losses again, but many of them are saying, look, we just can't keep going through this. We're losing. We're just losing it. Really, we're just almost struggling to have the confidence to reopen, and that's a tragedy for all of us. It's a tragedy certainly for the businesses and for their employees, but we want these businesses open. We enjoy them. We know. So it's not reasonable. It's just not reasonable. They need to be confident that they will be compensated for the total losses they've incurred, and that they will be in the future if this happens again. So that if it happens again, hopefully it doesn't, but if it does, they will know they will be paid.
And that is a really important point. It was actually my last question for you today is what happens if we end up in this space again? We must find a way, I guess, of making sure that these businesses know that they're going to be looked after so that the mental anguish, I guess, is taken out of it. That's a big part of what we're talking about, the stress and everything that goes along with running a small business in regular times, let alone COVID times, needs to be taken into account here, right?
That's absolutely true. So up front, they need to know that they won't be in a loss position if this happens again. The fact that we're now reopened, which is great, that's fantastic, but they still don't know if they're going to be compensated or how much they're going to be compensated. Spoke to one small business, fence business, that had 2 weddings over the weekend in regional Victoria. 2 weddings. Oh. You know, this was the best weekend that they were looking forward to. But the losses are really significant for that business, as you can imagine it would be. If they are to reopen and to continue to operate, they need to be confident that the government will pick up the tab for their losses.
As the advocate for small business and family enterprise, Kate, I detect in your voice a certain amount of passion here, and that comes from a number of things, obviously being passionate about the small businesses and family enterprises in Victoria, but I also imagine your phone's been running off the hook over the last 5 days, people calling you asking what can be done.
That's absolutely true, and the anguish that a lot of them are going through, just, almost at their wits' end, saying, look, we got to this place, we got through lockdown 1, lockdown 2, we reopened, we were back on track, and it's happened again. You just hear this sort of almost giving up scenario. We just can't keep doing this. And that's tragic. It's tragic for people who have put often years and years and years into growing their businesses to be in this position. But the very least that government can do is for them to give those businesses the confidence that they're not going to get a couple of $1,000. What they're going to get is what they lost, full costs of what they lost by being closed for those 5 days.
Kate, will you get the opportunity to tell this to the Premier and other members of the government, ministers, relevant ministers direct, or is this a campaign that we're going to need to start outside of government?
Look, I think we're going to have to keep the pressure on the government in these sorts of areas. I am confident they'll come up with some level of package, but in the past, the packages offered have been just not good enough for many of the businesses involved. But most importantly, what the businesses want is a confidence that if it happens again, they will be compensated for the full loss. And remember, after the 28th of March, there won't be any JobKeeper either. So, that's what the federal government says is the case. So that makes it even more important that the full costs, the full losses, are covered if there's closures again.
Okay, we cross our fingers that the campaign that your office is running is successful and that Victorian small businesses and family enterprises are looked after across the state as they should be. Thank you for advocating on their behalf and for speaking to us today here on Country Viewpoint.
It's an absolute pleasure.